Now let's focus on a warning that's come from the World Bank of the increased risks of price rises across the board if the conflict in the Middle East escalates, focusing on the possibility for huge rises in the price of oil to over $150 a barrel, but also looking at the price of gold. Long seen as a safe haven investment in times of upheaval, the price of the precious metal has risen by around 8% since the start of the Israel Gaza war. And according to a new report from the World Gold Council, it's also being brought up by central banks like never before. John Reid is market strategist at the World Gold Council, and he explained the findings.
Central banks have more than doubled the amount of gold that they've purchased, really starting from the middle of last year. And that's made a major difference, I think, to the gold market, even before this conflict lifted the gold price. We've seen the US dollar really strong. We've seen interest rates really strong. Normally, that would put gold under pressure. But because of this enormous central bank purchases, we're within a few percentage points of the all-time high in gold, which we saw both during COVID and then following the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
And I presume you don't see this trend changing or going in the opposite direction anytime soon?
No, I don't think so. We spend a lot of time talking to central banks about what they're doing in gold and why they're doing it, helping them understand the gold market. And there's a number of factors that are driving their purchases. I think there's a recognition from central banks that inflation is going to be more of a problem in the next decade than it was in the past 10 years. I think geopolitics is playing a role, not just the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but I think concerns that we're entering into a more lively geopolitical arena. I think as well the actions taken against the Central Bank of Russia sanctioning its reserves following the invasion of Ukraine have really made reserve managers at central banks sit up and take notice. And I think that they see the sanctions resistant qualities of gold as very attractive. And finally, I think there's the belief that we're moving towards a more multipolar world where it's not just the US dollar that is the reserve currency of the world, but in time there'll be other reserve currencies too. This rate of purchasing can continue, we think, for years, maybe even decades.
And it just goes to show, doesn't it, that gold, I mean, once upon a time, it was very much out of fashion, and our former Chancellor Gordon Brown famously sold off huge amounts of UK reserves, which now looks like a huge mistake. Of course, it just goes to show that gold will always remain as the safe haven in times of trouble, won't you think?
I think so, and I wouldn't be too quick to blame Gordon Brown for his sales. Lots of other central banks were selling gold at the time as well, but you're right. Gold is a perennial asset. It's and certainly over the last 10 years, following the global financial crisis, following the COVID pandemic, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, it's really demonstrated its role in a portfolio for central banks, but also for investors too.
John Reid there from the World Gold Council.